Hello, and welcome. My name is Ella, and I'm a psychologist that specialises in client retention and behaviour change. I'm also a business mentor who helps fitness coaches to grow a more peaceful business, right, by focusing more on their coaching world. So I have looked at must be over 100 check-in forms by now, so I know what makes a check-in form really good, and I also know the ways in which you can improve a check-in form. So in this video, you're going to watch me critique both a check-in form and an onboarding process, right? And these things are both really important. When it comes to online fitness coaching, a lot of coaches place a high importance on the check-in process. It's a key part of the coaching process, right? And most clients will get this weekly. So that means it's something that is worth paying attention to. And oftentimes it's something that a coach will do when they first start out with their career. And it's not usually something that they kind of check back over and make sure it's okay. So as I'm going to go through this, I'll talk you through my process of what it is I'm looking out for, but I'm very much coming from a client experience perspective and also a behavior change perspective, right? Is the client going to engage with this, enjoy this, but also is it going to move them closer to their goals, or is it just more of a data gathering form, which would probably be a little bit obsolete? Okay, so I'm going to jump in now. We're going to go through this check-in form. Okay, so we've got a check-in form here, and I'd say this is pretty standard form from some of the ones I've seen before. Let's go through it. It's pretty much anonymous, so you're not going to know whose it is. I'm looking at a few things, but the first thing that stands out to me is the branding, and as we go through it, the personality as well. Okay, now a thing that I'm massive on is building a coaching world. So most online coaches think that they're unique, but actually everybody is offering the same thing, right? You're all going to be doing check-ins, personalized nutrition, personalized training, WhatsApp support, training app, nutrition, right? That's what everybody is going to be doing. So that means that we have to make sure that the inside of your coaching world and the experience that a client has with you feels different to if they were inside another coaching world. So I should be able to tell who you are and what you're about from the resources inside your coaching world, right? That would be a really strong check-in form if it's really reflective of you and your personality. Okay, so the first thing that stands out to me is the lack of branding, and that doesn't have to mean logo or anything like that. Just no colours, no unique language to this coach. This could be copied and pasted into any coaching world. So that's the first thing that I'm picking up on, but not necessarily a huge problem. And also, just as I was saying, a lot of these questions could be in anyone's coaching world. How well has your week gone? How was your motivation? How stressed were you? That probably isn't the personality of the coach. This coach, I'm sure they have like a great personality, right? So that's what I would like to see in any check-in form I see. Is your personality reflected in it? And is the branding slightly reflective of your coaching world? Okay, so then before I kind of deep dive into the specific questions that are in a form, I like to have a look at the overall structure, right? So I like to kind of see, right, what's going on. So the first thing I'll look at is just overall, how long is this form going to be? So I've noticed that there's already, I think there's about 15 questions on this page. Just checking, about 15 questions, and there's another page as well. So let me just put in some test data so I can get to the second page. So, okay, so the first thing I'm thinking in my head is lengthwise, it's probably a little bit too long. We've got to think clients are busy. This is just kind of like a checkpoint as opposed to the coaching process. So we want this to be as easy as possible for them to fill out. We want to reduce the friction, and we want it to be highly valuable. Otherwise, we're going to end up with clients ghosting and essentially not doing the check-in form. So the first thing I'm thinking is probably a little bit long, and at the moment there's not as much personality in there as there could be. Okay. So now I'll probably start looking in a bit more detail about the questions, and I have an ideal structure in mind. Having looked at hundreds of check-in forms, I have an ideal structure. And actually, if you're interested in the ideal structure, the most powerful questions that you can ask, all my top tips in terms of the check-in procedure, and also replying to check-ins, what to do if a client goes to a follow-up protocol, you can grab that with the link in description. You'll get access to that straight away. Okay, and also I'm going to try and do these critiques like once a month. So if you want to submit your form to be critiqued, you can do that below as well. Right, let's get back to it. Okay. So now I'm looking at more specifically the structure of the questions in terms of the kinds of questions in what kind of order. So at the start, we've got quite a fair bit of data gathering. So we're trying to find out how the week has gone, adherence, stress levels, adherence to nutrition, whether they've done this, whether they've done that. So we've got some data gathering going on. All of this is still data gathering. If we go to the next page, we're still just gathering information. And then at the end, what I like about the form is that we are focusing on the week ahead. Okay, so right at the end, as the client is kind of wrapping up, they're going to be asking, well, what is it that you want to focus on this week, and what actions are going to take you closer? So I like that being at the end of the form. Okay, so overall, we kind of want three components of a check-in form. We want there to be the data gathering step. So basically I say looking back, working through barriers, and then looking forward. That's the three parts. So first and foremost, we need to understand and have a really good sense of where is the client. How is their week gone and where are they? We need to understand that. Then we need to use our form and include psychology to move them through any barriers. So can our form make them more motivated, more committed, more engaged, right? So that's the kind of middle bit. And then towards the end, it's all about focus. So what do they do next, right? What are their actions? And that is then crystal clear. So I think in a sense that the structure is okay, it's just a bit too long, and the type of questions that we're focusing on can be improved as well, right? So overall structure is kind of okay. We've got description, we're collecting the data at the start, and then at the end we are doing the action points, but maybe not as much moving through barriers in the middle. Now let's get into the types of questions, which is where I think that the most changes could be made, right? So what we have is we have a how well has your week gone, 1 to 10, good to bad. What would make the most sense is to start off with this question, but have it with conditional formatting. And so it means that based on their answer, they receive a different form. I love this because what ends up happening otherwise is that by week 6, the client has had the same check-in 6 times already, and it gets kind of boring, right? And the more we know what's coming, the kind of less engaged we become to that thing. And so if we had it so that, you know, between 1 and 3, they'll get a certain check-in form. It's basically a RAG rating, right? If they flag as red, we want to ask certain questions. If they flag as amber, which would be 4 to 6 maybe, and then if they flag as 7 to 10, that would be good, and we would have a different check-in form. And the idea is that if they've had a good week, the kind of questions that we want to ask them is more about, well, what has allowed them to have a great week? In what ways are they proud of themselves? What strengths have they been displaying? What do they want to carry forward moving forward, right? It wants to be a lot shorter as well, because they don't need to spend as much time on it if things are going well. Whereas if they've not had a great week and they're rating themselves a red or a 1, 2, 3, then we want to basically move them forward and make it more likely they're going to achieve success the week after. The issue with this form at the moment is that it's extremely focused on adherence to the plan. And so this person is basically going to start developing if I adhere, I've done well. If I haven't adhered, I haven't done well. When really coaching, as we know, and I know this coach will know it as well, goes far beyond adherence. So we have here, how was your motivation to adhere to the plan? How well did you adhere to your nutrition? What barriers did you face adhering to the plan? Okay, so it's very much about, did you do this? Did you do that? How much of this did you do? How much did you do of that? And really, I think this is one of those things that as coaches over time, the more we start coaching, the more we realize that we don't really need to know the ins and outs of this. What we need to do is to keep the person moving forward towards their goals. And that isn't necessarily about them adhering to everything that they're doing, unless you are a bodybuilding coach, right? In that case, then obviously it's very important that they adhere to everything, otherwise they're not going to get the results. But for most lifestyle clients, I would be centering a check-in more around, for example, how was their week? What are they proud of? What went well? What didn't go so well? And if they were emotional, if you work on emotional eating in your program, that's something that you could delve into as well. But yeah, not necessarily just what was the scores, because then it makes it really hard for you to reply. Because if they've just put their data in, for example, right, how well they've adhered, how stressed they were, that's not giving you much to go on in terms of your responses. And so you're just responding to the data, when really what we want to be doing is we want to be responding to a person's thoughts and feelings and challenges and moments of pride, so that we can coach them in more depth. Okay. And again, I understand why we're kind of collecting this data, but it's not something that necessarily we need in a check-in form, particularly as we probably have a coaching app, right? So we'll see how many training sessions they've completed, and we probably see a lot of these things. Okay, let me go to the next, see what else we've got. Yeah, this question about digestion, unless you're going to be working on their gut health, that's not necessarily necessary. I would say quality of sleep. Again, I know why we're collecting the data, because it's obviously going to impact how well they adhered. But when we shift the responsibility off of it being about adherence, and instead it's more about exploring the person's experience, how they're getting on, what do they want to bring, what do they want to explain to us, then we're going to have much deeper answers and build a much deeper relationship with our clients. And again, if you're thinking, right, what are you on about, Ella? You're going to understand below exactly what I mean by powerful questions, the kind of questions that we can be including instead of ones that just gather data. Okay, I love this one. What 3 things are you proud of? That would go at the start, right? So at the start, we want a question of like, what's gone well this week? What hasn't gone so well this week? And we let them open up with what they believe to be true. rather than it being at the end. What are your plans coming up this week so I can help you stay on track? Again, I'm not loving the focus on being on track, off track, off track, because we're just going to create problems down the line with clients, because what's going to end up happening is they associate on track with good, off track with bad. So when they're off track, they're going to be less likely to want to fill out the check-in form, and they're not going to want to communicate as much with us as coaches, right? So if we can move away from this kind of language, we're going to find it far more helpful with the work that we're doing with our clients as well. Love this question, what to focus on. I really like how you've then moved it into action planning, which is what we would call it. This question doesn't need to be necessarily asked every week, and hopefully you'd know this anyway, right? Through the conversations that you're having with your clients during the week. How do you feel about progress? Again, that could be more towards the start of the check-in form, because they're looking back on their week. You're getting a sense for how they feel. This is a great question. We're going to learn far more about them as a person. Basically asking what help they want from you, how much contact, and the way that you like the feedback. Okay, so overall, I just think there's too much of an emphasis on data collection and adherence and yes, no, and what have you done and all this kind of stuff, as opposed to how proud were you, what are the things that went well, what did you struggle with, what areas would you like to focus on, what's holding you back, what could help you move you closer to your goals. Those kind of questions are going to be a lot more helpful, right? But I like this one, by the way. What feedback would you like? Because some coaches, they'll spend all day doing video messages, and actually their client might just like a quick message. So I like that. Just a quick point here on calls. What you can do is you can have it so that if they rate themselves as red or really struggling, that can automatically send them a link to offer for them to book in a call. That's a nice way of doing it as well. But yeah, so if you want more detailed understanding of that, check the link. Okay, in hindsight, maybe I was being a little bit vague when I was saying the questions could be better. So I wanted to give you an example. You can download this for free below. But essentially, like I said, you want those 3 components. You want to be able to look back, you want to address the current barriers, and then you want to be able to look forward. So better questions to ask as opposed to data gathering would be things like, what are you proud of? How would you rate your week? What went well? What 3 words sum up your week? These are all variations of the same question, so don't include all of these questions. So these are variations of the same question, but we're trying to get to the heart of what does this person feel like their week has gone. Then basically the middle bit would be kind of trying to move them through those barriers slightly. And then the last kind of questions are ideas of how they can look forward. So what 3 actions would you like to focus on this week? How confident are you that you can complete these? What would make you proud this time next week? These are all questions, right? And then what you can do, this is advanced stuff, right? But we have these fitness avatars, and essentially they separate people into these 4 different avatars. And eventually when you know these avatars, you would create different forms for different avatars, which essentially would focus on their skill set. So you've got feelers and you've got thinkers. Now, feelers, you would send them a check-in form that is more about feeling, obviously, right? Exploring that person's feeling, because that is kind of their language. And if they're more of, what we would call quiet achievers or an optimizer, you would send them one of those kind of forms, and it would be far more data-oriented, progress-oriented, action-oriented, because that is their kind of language. So that's a really cool advanced concept that you can get into. Again, you can check all this stuff out in the videos below. But if you've got a client that's struggling, we might want to ask them kind of evoking questions. Things like, why is this journey worth continuing? How would you feel if you stop now? Now, this isn't something that you have to ask every week, but it might be something when, if the client has rated themselves as red, you might ask one of these questions. Again, I provide a list of what questions to ask for the red form, for the amber form, for the green form, for different avatar types. So yeah, there's loads of cool stuff that you can do with the check-in to take it, elevate it from just data gathering into a form that can genuinely move clients through their barriers. Okay. All right, I just wanted to add in that information there. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up that first video critiquing a check-in form. If you found that helpful, let me know. What you can do now is if you want to submit your check-in form for me to critique, I'll do 1 per month. Or if you want to grab more information, you can do that below as well. All right, I'll see you in the next video.